When Charlemagne died in 814, his empire began fracturing immediately. The great territories stretching from Spain to the Elbe couldn't survive under weak successors who lacked his military genius and administrative skill. By the 840s, Louis the Pious's three sons, Lothair, Louis the German, and Charles the Bald, waged devastating civil war that tore the Carolingian world apart. The Treaty of Verdun in 843 formalized this division, creating three kingdoms. Louis the German received the eastern territories, Bavaria, Saxony, Franconia, and Swabia, the heartland of Germanic tribes that would become medieval Germany. These weren't arbitrary lines drawn on maps. The Eastern Kingdom reflected real ethnic divisions. Germanic dialects dominated east of the Rhine, distinctly different from the Romance languages evolving westward. Louis the German understood his realm intimately, having governed Bavaria as sub-king under his father. He knew the delicate balance required, managing powerful dukes who jealously guarded their autonomy while defending vulnerable eastern frontiers against Slavic peoples pushing westward. Consolidating this fractured realm would test every diplomatic and military skill Louis possessed. The integration challenges were enormous. Bavaria formed Louis's power base, but Swabia in the southwest maintained strong Italian connections and resisted central control. Saxony in the north, conquered barely 50 years earlier by Charlemagne, remembered its pagan past and fierce resistance. The Saxon nobles retained pride in their tribal identity and viewed royal authority with suspicion. Franconia proved easiest to control, thoroughly Christianized and integrated into Carolingian administration. But even there, local nobles pursued independent agendas whenever royal attention wavered. The kingdom Louis inherited was geographically coherent but politically fragmented, held together more by external threats than internal loyalty. This would define German politics for centuries, a constant tension between royal authority and regional autonomy, between unity and fragmentation. Little did Louis know that far greater threats were gathering on the eastern steppes. The nightmare of the Magyar invasions was about to begin. The Magyar threat emerged during the late 9th century as these Finno-Ugric horsemen migrated westward from the Pontic steppes. Around 895, they settled in the Carpathian Basin, establishing a base from which they launched devastating raids into German territories. Magyar military tactics proved devastatingly effective. Exceptional horsemanship combined with composite bows that struck from a distance before traditional German heavy cavalry could engage. Their strategy emphasized speed and surprise, striking deep into territory before defenders could mobilize, then vanishing before counterattacks materialized. The first major incursion in 899 struck Bavaria with shocking violence. Monasteries, towns, and farms suffered massive destruction. The Magyars demonstrated sophisticated intelligence about German defenses, avoiding fortified positions while targeting vulnerable economic centers rich with plunder. The psychological impact exceeded even the material damage. German populations had grown comfortable with relative peace under later Carolingian rule. Suddenly, that security evaporated. Subsequent invasions followed a horrifying pattern. In 906, Magyar forces virtually destroyed the Bavarian army at Pressburg, killing Margrave Luitpold and most Bavarian nobles. The decentralized German defensive system collapsed spectacularly. Individual duchies couldn't coordinate effective resistance, while the royal government lacked resources for kingdom-wide responses. Economic devastation spread across German lands. Monasteries, centers of learning, agriculture, and economic innovation, suffered particularly severe damage. Irreplaceable manuscripts burned, agricultural operations collapsed, and trade routes were abandoned. The inability of Carolingian monarchs to provide protection undermined royal authority while strengthening local strongmen who offered immediate security. This political fragmentation accelerated during Louis the German's later years and intensified under his successors. Charles the Fat temporarily reunited much of Charlemagne's empire, but proved incapable of addressing the Magyar crisis. His deposition in 887 marked the effective end of Carolingian rule in Germany. Louis the Child, only 6 when he became king in 900, ruled through regents who struggled desperately against escalating Magyar raids. His death in 911 at age 17 extinguished the Carolingian line in Germany and precipitated a succession crisis. The German nobles faced a stark choice: accept a Carolingian claimant from the West Frankish kingdom or elect their own king. They chose the latter. In 911, they elected Conrad, Duke of Franconia, the first non-Carolingian to rule Germany since the Frankish conquest. This election established a revolutionary precedent. German kings would be chosen by great nobles rather than inheriting by birthright. But Conrad's reign proved turbulent, marked by constant conflicts with other dukes who resented submitting to their peer. When Conrad died in 918, the electors made an even more transformative choice. They selected Henry, Duke of Saxony, beginning the Ottonian dynasty that would reshape Germany and create the Holy Roman Empire. Henry I, called the Fowler for his love of falconry, brought fundamentally different approaches to kingship than his predecessors. Born around 876, Henry had witnessed the gradual collapse of central authority and understood that effective rule required practical military strength, not just theoretical authority. His experience as Duke of Saxony taught him that survival demanded innovation. The Magyar threat remained his most immediate challenge. Raids had only intensified during the political instability following Conrad's death. Traditional reactive defense had failed spectacularly. Henry concluded that fundamental military reforms were essential for the kingdom's survival. Henry's innovations began with systematic construction of fortified towns, Bergen, strategically positioned to control transportation routes and provide secure military bases. These weren't mere defensive positions, but multifunctional centers. Each fortification controlled river crossings, mountain passes, or major roads, allowing garrisons to monitor and restrict enemy movement. Inside the walls, permanent garrisons of professional warriors could respond rapidly to incursions without waiting for slow feudal levy mobilizations. Economically, these Bergen attracted merchants and craftsmen who valued security, concentrating population and commerce into defensible centers that could be more efficiently taxed and supplied. Military reforms extended beyond fortifications. Henry recognized that traditional Germanic heavy cavalry couldn't counter highly mobile Magyar raiders. He established specialized light cavalry units trained in composite bows and hit-and-run tactics, essentially adopting Magyar methods against them. These units recruited from younger sons of noble families and rode horses bred for speed rather than the massive destriers favored by heavy cavalry. Training emphasized individual marksmanship and coordinated maneuver warfare matching Magyar mobility. Simultaneously, Henry maintained traditional heavy cavalry and infantry essential for sieges and pitched battles against conventional enemies. The effectiveness proved itself in 924 at Riyadh, where Saxon forces achieved the first significant German victory against Magyar raiders. Magyar forces attempted their traditional tactic of bypassing fortifications, but Henry's light cavalry shadowed and harassed them while his main army blocked retreat routes. Saxon heavy cavalry delivered the decisive blow only after light cavalry had disrupted Magyar formations and prevented their characteristic rapid withdrawal. This victory marked a turning point. The nomadic raiders weren't invincible. Henry negotiated a 9-year truce, agreeing to pay tribute for peace. Critics condemned this, but the arrangement gave Henry crucial time to extend military reforms throughout Germany and prepare for comprehensive campaigns against the Magyar threat. The transformation Henry initiated would enable his son Otto to not merely defend Germany, but to forge an empire that would last 1,000 years. Otto I inherited in 936, a kingdom fundamentally transformed during his father's 17-year reign. Otto possessed both Henry's military innovations and the political stability necessary for ambitious goals extending far beyond mere survival. His vision encompassed restoring imperial dignity, and establishing German hegemony over Central Europe. Early reign rebellions from powerful dukes tested Otto's authority, most seriously from his younger brother Henry, who allied with discontented nobles attempting to claim the throne. Otto's suppression demonstrated military capability and political acumen, defeating enemies while avoiding devastating internal warfare that had weakened previous rulers. Otto's attention increasingly turned toward Italy, where political fragmentation and papal conflicts created intervention opportunities. The Italian situation was complex. Competing claims to the Italian crown, ongoing factional struggles, and growing Byzantine influence in southern Italy. Otto's first Italian expedition in 951 responded to Adelaide's appeal. The widow of King Lothar of Italy sought protection against Berengar of Ivrea's attempts to force marriage and secure his Italian throne claim. Otto's intervention proved swift and decisive, leading to his marriage to Adelaide and coronation as King of Italy. This success established German influence south of the Alps and created foundations for Otto's later imperial claims. February 2nd, 962 marked the most significant moment in medieval German history. Pope John X crowned Otto as Holy Roman Emperor in St. Peter's Basilica. This represented far more than ceremonial recognition of Otto's power. It constituted a deliberate attempt to revive the imperial tradition established by Charlemagne and position the German kingdom as the legitimate Roman Empire successor. The concept of renovatio imperii, renewal of empire, became the ideological cornerstone of Ottonian political theory. This doctrine claimed the Roman Empire had never truly ended, but transferred to Germanic peoples through divine providence. German kings were rightful heirs to Augustus, Constantine, and Charlemagne, bearing responsibility for maintaining Christian civilization and defending the church against enemies. The Ottonian court became a center of intellectual and artistic activity later recognized as the Ottonian Renaissance. Monasteries like Reichenau on Lake Constance produced magnificent illuminated manuscripts demonstrating sophisticated synthesis of Byzantine, Carolingian, and Germanic artistic traditions. Corvey Abbey in Saxony served as another crucial center of Ottonian intellectual activity, its library containing one of Northern Europe's largest collections of classical and patristic texts. The integration of church into imperial administration became cornerstone of Ottonian policy, creating what historians term the Ottonian church system. By granting bishops substantial temporal authority, Otto created reliable administrators who owed positions directly to imperial appointment and couldn't pass positions to sons. This system would dominate German governance for over a century. But when the Ottonian line failed in 1024, Germany would face another succession crisis that would test whether the constitutional arrangements Otto created could survive dynastic failure. Henry II's death in 1024 extinguished the Ottonian dynasty and precipitated a succession crisis that reshaped relationships between German monarchy and powerful duchies. The Electoral Assembly in 1024 elected Conrad, Duke of Franconia, whose claim rested on marriage to Gisela, connected to the Ottonian family through Bavarian ducal lines. This distant genealogical link provided sufficient legitimacy while asserting nobles' right to choose rulers. Conrad's coronation, September 8, 1024, in Mainz Cathedral, established the Salian dynasty and introduced new governance approaches dominating German politics for the next century. Conrad recognized that traditional Ottonian reliance on episcopal administrators was insufficient for managing increasingly complex challenges. Urban growth, expanding trade networks, and sophisticated economic systems required administrative innovations beyond ecclesiastical frameworks. Conrad's domestic policies focused on strengthening royal authority through systematic crown land development and creating more professional administrative apparatus. He established new royal residences in strategic locations, each equipped with administrative offices managing royal estates, collecting revenues, and coordinating military activities. The development of ministeriales, unfree knights serving directly under royal authority, became cornerstone of Salian administration. These individuals, drawn from skilled serfs and freedmen, received military training and administrative responsibilities in exchange for complete loyalty. Unlike traditional nobility, ministeriales couldn't claim hereditary rights to positions or territories, making them ideal instruments for implementing royal policy. Conrad's death in 1039 brought his 11-year-old son Henry IV to the German throne, creating a regency crisis with profound implications. Henry's minority exposed fundamental tensions within the Salian governance system. Powerful nobles who had accepted royal authority under strong adult rulers proved reluctant to submit to regents acting for a child king. The regency initially fell to Henry's mother, Empress Agnes of Poitou, whose French origins and limited understanding of German political traditions made her vulnerable to ambitious nobles. Agnes's regency saw a series of compromises gradually eroding royal authority while strengthening regional powerholders who had chafed under Conrad's centralized policies. The most significant challenge came from Godfrey the Bearded, Duke of Upper Lorraine, whose 1044 rebellion demonstrated royal authority's fragility during Henry's minority. Motivated by personal grievances related to marriage plans and territorial ambitions, the rebellion quickly attracted support from nobles who saw opportunities to extract concessions. Archbishop Anno of Cologne's 1062 seizure of the young king marked a decisive shift in regency arrangements. Anno's coup, executed during a river journey, was justified as necessary to protect the king from his mother's malign influence, but effectively transferred royal authority to a coalition of German bishops pursuing their own political agenda. The Cologne Regency systematically reversed many centralizing policies Conrad had implemented, dismantling the ministerialis system and redistributing crown lands to noble supporters. This created a more decentralized political structure that would prove difficult for Henry to reconstruct once he achieved majority. When Henry finally assumed personal rule in 1065 at age 15, he inherited a realm where ducal autonomy had strengthened at royal prerogatives' expense, where church hierarchy had developed independent political ambitions, and where external pressures from papal reform movements threatened traditional relationships between imperial and ecclesiastical authority. The stage was set for the investiture controversy, the constitutional crisis that would define Henry's reign and reshape European political development for centuries. Henry IV's assumption of personal rule in 1065 coincided with unprecedented challenges testing fundamental principles of Salian governance. The young king inherited a realm where ducal autonomy had grown during his minority, where church hierarchy pursued independent political ambitions, and where papal reform movements threatened traditional imperial ecclesiastical relationships. The Saxon Rebellion of 1073 to 1075 represented the most serious internal challenge. Triggered by Henry's attempts to reassert royal control through new fortifications and appointed administrators, Saxon nobles violently resisted these policies, determined to preserve autonomy enjoyed during the Regency period. The rebellion's resolution through 1075's compromise settlement established important precedents for royal authority versus noble autonomy relationships. Henry agreed to limit fortification activities and respect traditional Saxon privileges, retreating from his father's centralizing ambitions. Yet rebels' acceptance of royal sovereignty confirmed ultimate imperial authority supremacy, even facing determined regional resistance. But during the Saxon Rebellion's final phases emerged a new conflict dimension that would dominate Henry's reign: the investiture controversy. Originating in broader 11th century church reform movements, particularly Pope Gregory VII's efforts to eliminate clerical corruption and assert papal independence from secular control, this controversy challenged the Ottonian church system's very foundations. Gregory VII's reform agenda directly challenged the Ottonian church system that had served as imperial administration's foundation for nearly a century. The Pope's prohibition of lay investiture threatened eliminating emperors' ability to control episcopal appointments, potentially undermining entire imperial governance structures dependent on loyal bishops serving as territorial administrators. The Dictatus Papae issued by Gregory in 1075 articulated the most radical papal supremacy claims ever advanced, asserting the Pope's authority to depose emperors, release subjects from loyalty oaths to secular rulers, and exercise ultimate jurisdiction over all Christian society matters. These claims directly challenged imperial authority's theoretical foundations. Henry's appointment of bishops to Milan and other Italian cities violated Gregory's explicit prohibitions, while the Pope's excommunication threat represented unprecedented papal authority assertion over imperial actions. Gregory VII's excommunication of Henry IV in February 1076 created a political and spiritual crisis threatening imperial authority's very foundations. The papal decree not only declared the emperor cut off from Christian communion, but released subjects from loyalty oaths, effectively inviting rebellion throughout German territories. German nobles' response to Henry's excommunication revealed how much papal authority had grown and how traditional royal legitimacy concepts had been undermined. The October 1076 assembly at Tribur delivered an ultimatum requiring Henry to obtain papal absolution within a year or face deposition. Henry's January 1077 journey to Canossa represented one of medieval European history's most dramatic moments. The emperor's decision to cross the Alps in winter through treacherous mountain passes demonstrated his recognition that political survival required papal absolution regardless of personal humiliation involved. The confrontation at Canossa unfolded over 3 days of carefully choreographed ritual emphasizing the Pope's spiritual authority while preserving some imperial dignity. Henry's appearance as a barefoot penitent outside castle gates created powerful visual representation of secular submission to ecclesiastical authority. The immediate political consequences proved complex and contradictory. Papal absolution eliminated religious justification for noble rebellion while demonstrating the emperor's willingness to subordinate imperial dignity to political necessity. But the humiliating circumstances also provided Henry's enemies with powerful propaganda tools. The constitutional crisis was far from over. If anything, Canossa had only intensified the fundamental questions about where ultimate authority resided in Christian Europe. Conflict between Henry and Gregory resumed following Canossa, demonstrating the dramatic encounter had resolved none of the fundamental issues underlying the investiture controversy. Henry's support for anti-Pope Clement III and his 1081–1084 Italian military campaigns represented his determination to reverse his submission's political consequences while maintaining imperial authority claims. The emperor's successful 1084 Rome siege and coronation by Clement appeared to restore imperial prestige, but Gregory's continued resistance from Castel Sant'Angelo ensured conflict would continue. Gregory VII's 1085 death and Henry's Germany return marked a new phase characterized by more pragmatic approaches to underlying constitutional issues. Urban II's papal succession brought a pope more willing to negotiate compromises while maintaining essential church reform principles. Similarly, Henry's Italian campaign experience demonstrated military solutions' practical limitations to ecclesiastical conflicts. Compromised solutions development during the 1090s reflected growing recognition by both imperial and papal authorities that the investiture controversy couldn't be resolved through complete victory by either side. The distinction's emergence between episcopal authority's spiritual and temporal aspects provided theoretical frameworks for preserving both papal control over religious matters and imperial influence over administrative functions. Henry VII's reign, succeeding his father in 1106 following a rebellion, demonstrating the investiture conflict's continuing political costs, brought fresh perspectives to the constitutional crisis dominating German politics for 3 decades. The new emperor's willingness to negotiate seriously with papal representatives reflected both recognition of complete victory's practical impossibility and his desire to focus imperial resources on other challenges facing the German kingdom. The Concordat of Worms, signed September 23, 1122, established comprehensive frameworks resolving the investiture controversy that recognized both imperial and papal authorities' legitimate interests. The agreement's central innovation was formal distinction between episcopal office's spiritual and temporal aspects, allowing the pope to control religious investiture through ring and staff grants, while preserving imperial influence over temporal matters through homage ceremony and regalia grants. This dual investiture system provided practical solutions to administrative challenges that had made conflict so intractable while respecting theological principles motivating papal reform efforts. The implementation required careful procedural attention, accommodating German territories' diverse legal and political traditions. Elections should be conducted according to canonical procedures, but in imperial representatives' presence, ensuring both ecclesiastical and secular interests would be considered. The resolution established new equilibrium between imperial and papal authority, but Henry V's 1125 death without direct heir precipitated another succession crisis, fundamentally reshaping German politics. The electoral assembly faced competing claims from several powerful noble families representing different visions for imperial policy's future direction. The eventual selection of Lothair of Supplinburg, Duke of Saxony, over the more obvious Hohenstaufen candidate Conrad of Swabia marked deliberate hereditary succession rejection, favoring a candidate promising to respect enhanced autonomy German dukes had gained. Lothair's reign represented consolidation rather than innovation, stabilizing arrangements the Concordat established while avoiding ambitious imperial projects. But his 1137 death created another electoral opportunity that German nobles approached with significantly different priorities. The intervening period had witnessed new challenges demanding stronger imperial leadership, particularly Norman rulers' growing power in southern Italy and French influences increasing assertiveness in Western European affairs. The stage was set for the Hohenstaufen dynasty, the most ambitious and ultimately tragic chapter in medieval German history. Conrad of Hohenstaufen's 1138 election marked the beginning of medieval German history's most ambitious phase. Conrad's selection represented a calculated gamble by German electoral princes who chose a candidate from the powerful Swabian ducal family despite previous Hohenstaufen claims' rejection. The new king brought not only extensive territorial resources from his Swabian inheritance, but sophisticated understanding of broader European political landscape developed during Italian and Holy Land travels and military campaigns. Conrad III's early reign was dominated by Second Crusade participation, demonstrating both German imperial authorities' growing international prestige and practical limitations constraining imperial ambitions. The disastrous German crusading army marched through Anatolia, where Byzantine duplicity and Seljuk military pressure resulted in most Conrad's forces' destruction, provided harsh lessons about projecting imperial power beyond traditional German influence boundaries. Conrad's nephew Frederick's emergence as Duke of Swabia during the 1140s introduced to German politics a figure whose political acumen, military capability, and cultural sophistication combination would transform imperial authority's nature. Frederick, later known as Barbarossa for his distinctive red beard, had spent formative years observing his uncle's reign limitations while developing his own imperial greatness vision, drawing upon both Germanic traditions and broader European political developments. Frederick's 1152 election following Conrad's death represented a generational shift, bringing new energy and ambition to imperial policy. The new emperor's Aachen coronation ceremony deliberately evoked Charlemagne's legacy, while incorporating innovative elements reflecting Frederick's sophisticated imperial symbolism understanding. Representatives' presence from throughout Christian Europe at the coronation demonstrated international recognition Frederick commanded even before beginning active reign. Frederick Barbarossa's imperial authority conception rested upon Renovatio Imperiis' theoretical foundation, Roman Empire renewal, but his doctrine interpretation proved far more sophisticated and historically informed than predecessors. Court scholars, drawing upon recently rediscovered Roman legal texts and Byzantine political theory, developed elaborate imperial supremacy justifications positioning the Holy Roman Empire as Augustus's creation's direct continuation. Frederick's first 1154 Italian expedition marked campaign series beginnings that would define his reign and establish enduring conflict between imperial ambitions and Italian political realities. Initial success in northern Italy, where imperial armies captured several key cities and imposed new administrative arrangements, demonstrated German forces' continued military superiority when properly organized and supplied. Milan's 1158 siege showcased sophisticated military capabilities Frederick developed during early campaigns. The imperial army employed advanced siege techniques combining traditional Germanic assault methods with innovations borrowed from Byzantine and Islamic military practice. The city's eventual capitulation after prolonged siege established Frederick's reputation as formidable military commander while providing substantial financial resources for future campaigns. Frederick's imperial coronation by Pope Adrian IV in Rome during June 1155 represented initial Italian success culmination and formally established his universal Christian authority claims. The coronation ceremony deliberately emphasized continuity with Carolingian and Ottonian traditions while incorporating new elements reflecting Frederick's unique imperial dignity interpretation. However, the conflict developing between Guelphs and Ghibellines during Frederick's Italian campaigns reflected broader European struggle between papal and imperial authority emerging from the investiture controversy. The Battle of Legnano in 1176 marked decisive defeat of Frederick's northern Italy imperial ambitions, demonstrating Lombard League military innovations' effectiveness. The 1183 Peace of Constance established comprehensive settlement, recognizing imperial authorities' practical limitations in northern Italy while preserving theoretical imperial supremacy claims. Subscribe to Flow of History to discover how Frederick's ambitions would reshape medieval Europe and create conflicts lasting for generations. Frederick's marriage to Beatrice of Burgundy in 1156 had strategic implications extending far beyond personal realm, bringing wealthy Burgundian territories under direct imperial control and strengthening Frederick's position in ongoing conflicts with French royal authority. Burgundian Resources Incorporation provided Frederick additional financial and military capabilities, proving crucial during extended Italian campaigns, while Marriage Alliance created new diplomatic opportunities for imperial policy throughout Western Europe. Frederick Barbarossa's 1190 death during the Third Crusade created succession crisis with profound future imperial authority development implications. Frederick's drowning while crossing the Salif River in Anatolia deprived the German kingdom of its most capable ruler at crucial European political development moment. Henry VI's imperial throne succession brought to power a ruler whose political vision proved even more ambitious than his father's, encompassing not only traditional imperial territories but also Sicily's Norman kingdom through marriage to Constance, Sicilian royal house's last legitimate heir. This dynastic union created unprecedented Hohenstaufen expansion opportunities while generating new papal authority, French royal interests, and Byzantine imperial southern Italy claims conflicts. Henry VI's 1194-1197 Sicily conquest demonstrated military capabilities the Hohenstaufen dynasty developed during Frederick Barbarossa's reign, while revealing administrative challenges governing such diverse territories involved. Henry VI's premature 1197 death at age 32 created most serious German history succession crisis since Carolingian dynasty extinction. The emperor's death left infant son Frederick as nominal heir to vast territories stretching from Baltic Sea to Mediterranean, but practical impossibility governing such empire through Regency Council created competing claimants and regional separatist movements opportunities. The disputed election following Henry's death, with rival candidates supported by different German nobility factions, initiated civil war lasting nearly 2 decades. Conflict between Philip of Swabia, representing Hohenstaufen interests, and Otto of Brunswick, backed by wealth, family resources, and papal support, divided German territories along factional lines. Frederick's eventual emergence as undisputed German king and Holy Roman Emperor represented one of medieval European history's most remarkable political recoveries. The young Hohenstaufen heir, who spent formative years in Sicily under papal guardianship, brought to imperial throne unique cultural influences, combination transforming imperial authority's nature. Frederick's Palermo education in cosmopolitan environment exposed him to Norman administrative practices, Islamic scholarly traditions, and Byzantine diplomatic methods, creating unprecedented political and cultural element synthesis. Frederick's Palermo court became 13th century Europe's most sophisticated learning and artistic production center, earning him epithet Stupor Mundi, wonder of the world. The administrative system Frederick developed in Sicily represented revolutionary medieval governance approach incorporating Norman, Islamic, and Byzantine traditions elements while maintaining imperial authority's theoretical framework. Professional bureaucracy creation, staffed by educated administrators regardless of social origins, challenged traditional feudal hierarchies while providing more effective governance than aristocratic systems characterizing most medieval kingdoms. Law systematic codification in Melfi constitutions established legal principles influencing European jurisprudence, while demonstrating Frederick's rational administrative methods commitment. Frederick's religious diversity approach within territories reflected cosmopolitan influences, shaping his worldview during Sicilian upbringing. Emperor's Muslim population's tolerance in Sicily and southern Italy, while maintaining Christian faith and supporting church institutions, created unique religious coexistence model remarkable for its time. The renewed papal authority conflict characterizing Frederick's later reign reflected fundamental incompatibility between his imperial supremacy vision and Church's spiritual and temporal authority claims. Pope Gregory IX's 1227 Frederick excommunication, ostensibly for delayed crusade departure, initiated struggle dominating European politics for Frederick's reign remainder. The emperor's successful Holy Land crusading expedition, accomplished while under papal excommunication, demonstrated his ability achieving remarkable diplomatic and military successes despite ecclesiastical opposition. Frederick's negotiated Jerusalem recovery through diplomatic agreements with Ayyubid Sultan al-Kamil showcased sophisticated Islamic politics understanding and willingness employing unconventional methods achieving crusading objectives. Frederick's 1250 death at Fiorentino hunting lodge marked medieval imperial history's most ambitious phase end and initiated final Hohenstaufen power collapse. The emperor's passing without achieving fundamental Italian effective imperial control objectives while maintaining German territories created power vacuum reshaping European politics for generations. The legend of Frederick as sleeping emperor, who would one day return restoring imperial greatness, became powerful German cultural consciousness element. The brief Conrad IV, 1250-1254 reign represented final attempt maintaining Hohenstaufen imperial claims facing overwhelming papal, French, and Italian forces opposition. But the dynasty's days were numbered, and Germany would soon enter its greatest crisis yet. Conrad IV's 1254 death created power vacuum unlike anything German territories experienced since Carolingian Empire collapse 4 centuries earlier. Unlike previous succession crises, typically resolved within months through electoral assemblies or dynastic arrangements, Hohenstaufen line extinction coincided with fundamental breakdown in political consensus previously governing imperial elections. The great territorial princes possessing German king choice rights found themselves divided not merely over competing candidates, but over imperial authority's very nature and centralized monarchy extent remaining desirable or possible. The great interregnum, beginning with Conrad's death, would last until 1273, nearly 2 decades without effective royal authority. The Electoral College convening months following Conrad's death represented far more fragmented and self-interested body than assemblies choosing previous German kings. Traditional electoral princes, Mainz, Cologne, and Trier archbishops, along with secular electors including Saxony Duke, Brandenburg Margrave, Rhine Count Palatine, and Bohemia King, approached succession question with fundamentally different priorities than predecessors demonstrated during earlier electoral crises. Having witnessed devastating papal-imperial conflict consequences during Frederick II's reign, ecclesiastical electors determined avoiding choosing candidates who might renew Rome's struggles. Secular electors, meanwhile, had grown accustomed governing territories without imperial interference and showed little enthusiasm restoring centralized authority, characterizing earlier imperial periods. Foreign candidates' emergence for German throne reflected both domestic claimants' weakness and German politics' growing international dimensions. Richard of Cornwall, King Henry III of England's younger brother, possessed substantial financial resources derived from Cornish tin mines and continental holdings, making him attractive for electors prioritizing immediate financial benefits over long-term political considerations. Alfonso X of Castile presented even more exotic alternative, claiming German throne through descent from Hohenstaufen line via Mother Beatrice of Swabia. The 1257 double election demonstrated electoral system complete breakdown, previously providing Germany legitimate rulers. January 13th, Frankfurt faction elected Richard Cornwall as German king, while competing groups selected Alfonso of Castile at separate assembly. Neither claimant possessed resources or political support necessary, establishing effective German territories' control. Richard of Cornwall's May 17, 1257. Aachen coronation provided symbolic legitimacy associated with Charlemagne's former capital, but ceremony's sparse attendance revealed limited German nobility support he commanded. Alfonso of Castile never even attempted visiting Germany during nominal reign, governing claimed kingdom entirely through correspondence and diplomatic representatives. Effective royal authority's absence during Great Interregnum accelerated political developments emerging during final Hohenstaufen rule decades. Territorial princes previously balancing regional interests against imperial obligations found themselves free pursuing purely local policies without broader imperial consideration concerns. The consolidation of electoral rights during this period represented one of German history's most significant constitutional developments. 7 princes possessing exclusive German king choice rights began formalizing procedures and asserting collective imperial succession authority, ways never systematically articulated during previous centuries. The economic transformation of northern Germany during Great Interregnum occurred largely independently of electoral territories, political developments, reflecting commercial activities' growing importance transcending traditional feudal boundaries. Hanseatic League emergence as dominant Baltic and North Sea trade force represented new political organization form, challenging both territorial and imperial authority, while creating participating cities unprecedented prosperity. Lübeck's role as emerging Hanseatic system leading city reflected strategic position at Baltic and overland trade routes intersection. The growth of urban populations within Hanseatic cities during interregnum period reflected economic opportunities created by expanded commercial activities. Craftsmen, laborers, and service providers migrated to trading centers where they could find long-distance commerce-related activities employment. The political autonomy. Hanseatic cities achieved during Great Interregnum established urban self-governance precedents influencing German political development for centuries. effective imperial or territorial oversight absence allowed city governments developing administrative systems based on commercial rather than feudal principles. When Rudolf of Habsburg finally emerged as candidate for German throne in early 1270s, it would mark not restoration of old imperial glory, but beginning of fundamentally new political order. The medieval empire was dead. What would replace it would be something entirely different. Rudolf of Habsburg's emergence as German throne candidate in early 1270s reflected electoral princes' changing priorities after nearly 2 decades of ineffective foreign kingship. Rudolf's southwestern Germany territorial holdings provided secure power base, while family reputation for military competence and administrative skill made him attractive alternative to absent Alfonso and increasingly irrelevant Richard of Cornwall. The Habsburg candidate's willingness accepting significant royal authority limitations while promising restoring basic governmental functions appealed to electors weary of chaos characterizing interregnum period. Negotiations preceding Rudolf's election revealed extent electoral expectations changed during previous 2 decades. Electors demanded explicit guarantees new king would respect territorial autonomy, limit imperial taxation, and avoid ambitious foreign policies characterizing Hohenstaufen rule. Rudolf's acceptance of these conditions represented fundamental German kingship nature transformation, establishing limited monarchy precedents influencing imperial governance for Holy Roman Empire's remaining existence. Rudolf's October 1st, 1273. Frankfurt election marked great interregnum formal end and new German political development phase beginning. New kings October 24th. Aachen coronation ceremony demonstrated both traditional imperial symbolism, continuity, and electors imposed constitutional limitations, acceptance. Early Rudolf reign months devoted establishing practical royal authority within electors' accepted limited framework. New king's systematic major German cities and territories visitation demonstrated personal governance commitment while respecting local privileges and customs. Rudolf's royal administration approach emphasized negotiation and compromise rather than absolute authority assertion, creating limited monarchy model characterizing later medieval period German kingship. Rudolf's limited monarchy establishment created new German politics equilibrium, but constitutional arrangements emerging from his reign remained largely informal and dependent on king and territorial princes' personal relationships. Louis's 1347 death and subsequent Charles of Bohemia election marked new German constitutional development phase beginning. New king brought throne both extensive territorial resources and sophisticated legal and administrative theory, understanding transforming previous century informal practices into formal constitutional law. Charles's Bohemia king background provided extensive complex territorial arrangements and diverse populations management experience, while papal court Avignon education exposed him to his time most advanced legal and administrative theories. Charles possessed unique practical governmental experience and theoretical knowledge combination, enabling addressing constitutional ambiguities plaguing German politics since Hohenstaufen dynasty end. Political situation. Charles' inherited 1347 reflected both constitutional arrangements previous century developed achievements and limitations. Electoral system provided Germany legitimate rulers while preventing devastating civil wars characterizing Hohenstaufen period, but electoral procedures in formal nature created persistent rights and responsibilities, ambiguities about both electors and kings. Written constitutional documents' absence meant each electoral assembly had negotiating fundamental procedure and authority questions, creating dispute and manipulation opportunities threatening entire system stability. Charles's initial German king years devoted consolidating position within existing constitutional framework while developing more comprehensive reforms plans. King's extensive late 1340s and early 1350s German territories travels provided detailed local conditions and political arrangements knowledge, while electoral princes' diplomatic correspondence revealed constitutional clarification need concerns. New challenges emergence, including Black Death caused economic disruption, and urban communities' growing assertiveness created governmental innovations pressure, addressing traditional feudal arrangements, scope beyond problems. Charles's constitutional theory development drew upon multiple legal and political authority sources reflecting cosmopolitan influences shaping intellectual development. King's Roman law familiarity gained through University of Bologna and other legal learning centers. Connections provided sophisticated theoretical imperial authority, understanding frameworks and territorial governance relationship. Canon law exposure through papal connections offered additional spiritual and temporal authority relationship perspectives, while Bohemia King, practical experience, demonstrated written legal codes' effectiveness, managing complex political relationships. The Golden Bull 1356 creation preliminary negotiations began during 1355 electoral assembly when Charles's Holy Roman Emperor coronation provided comprehensive constitutional reform discussions opportunity. Rome coronation ceremony gathered electoral princes engaged extensive electoral procedures, codifying and imperial authority and electoral rights relationship, defining deliberations necessity. These discussions revealed broad constitutional reform desirability agreement while highlighting specific provisions and procedures significant disagreements. The stage was set for one of medieval history's most important constitutional documents, a charter that would define German politics until Napoleon dissolved the empire 4.5 centuries later. The Golden Bull 1356 issued Charles IV. January 10th. Nuremberg and supplemented additional December 25th same year, Metz promulgated provisions represented medieval German history most comprehensive constitutional document. Bull's 23 chapters provided detailed imperial elections every aspect covering regulations from electoral assembly initial convocation to chosen candidate coronation. Documents constitutional questions, systematic approach, and procedural details. Careful attention created legal framework governing German politics more than 4 centuries. Bull's 7 electoral princes, formal identification marked previous century informally developed electoral system, definitive codification. 3 ecclesiastical electors, Mainz Archbishop, Cologne Archbishop, and Trier Archbishop, granted specific ceremonial and administrative roles reflecting German politics' traditional importance. Mainz Archbishop received Germany Arch-Chancellor formal recognition with electoral assemblies convening and election process conducting responsibility. Cologne Archbishop designated Italy Arch-Chancellor, while Trier Archbishop became Burgundy Arch-Chancellor, creating empire territorial extent symbolic representation. 4 secular electors. Golden Bull identified represented German kingdom most powerful territorial princes whose military resources and strategic positions made effective royal governance support essential. Bohemia King, whose extensive territories and mineral wealth made him Central Europe most powerful rulers, 1. Received Empire Arch Cupbearer formal recognition and secular electors precedence granted. Saxony Duke, whose northern German territories control and imperial politics family historical importance, secured archmarshal position, electoral framework, significant military responsibilities retained. Brandenburg Margrave's electoral prince's inclusion reflected Eastern territories' growing importance and March's empire Slavic frontier position strategic significance. Rhine Count Palatine, whose territories crucial Rhine River most important transportation routes controlled, traditional arch-steward role confirmation and imperial governance, royal absence or incapacity during responsibility received. Golden Bull's electoral procedures regarding provisions established, disputed elections, preventing designed detailed regulations, great interregnum characterized kind. Document-specified electoral assemblies must Frankfurt-Mainz, within king death notification, receiving 1 month convene, predictable royal authority, prolonged vacancies, preventing schedule creating. Electors Frankfurt until candidate majority vote received, remain requirement eliminated. Indefinite delays possibility, while extensive deliberation after simple majority decision-making provision ensured even significant electors' disagreement cases, elections completed be could. Bull's specific voting procedures establishment reflected Charles's electoral assemblies complicated previous ambiguities, eliminating determination. Each elector required person vote cast, proxy arrangements, sometimes electoral intentions, confusion created kind preventing, secret conducted voting requirement, results public declaration followed, honest deliberation need balanced electoral process, transparency importance, electoral decisions recording and official documents, preserving detailed provisions, created permanent future electoral legitimacy, disputes resolving records could. Golden Bull's territorial provisions, German politics' most persistent conflict sources, one addressed electoral territories, inheritance and administration, clear rules establishing. Documents electoral principalities, indivisibility confirmation, prevented many German duchies previous centuries weakened territorial fragmentation kind. Primogeniture succession electoral territories establishment ensured each electoral principality intact remain, and constitutional responsibilities fulfilling capable would, while electoral territories imperial consent, without alienating prohibition, foreign powers, manipulation against electoral system protected. Golden Bull's electoral territories autonomy regarding provisions previous century developed constitutional reality formally recognizing electoral princes acquired extensive governmental powers. Document electors' territories within comprehensive authority granted, including taxation rights, military organization, and judicial administration, effectively sovereign rulers' domains within them made. Imperial electoral territories taxation without electoral consent, prohibition royal authority important limitations established, while electoral princes constitutional responsibilities fulfilling necessary resources possess ensuring. Bull's electoral territories, specific privileges establishment German political system, formal hierarchy created electoral principalities, other territorial units distinguished. Electoral princes' mining rights grant increasingly 14th century European economics, important becoming mineral wealth access them provided. Electoral markets establish and customs duties, collect rights. Confirmation additional revenue sources created electoral independence enhanced while territories' economic development contributing. Golden Bull's imperial authority and electoral rights relationship regarding provisions, careful royal prerogatives, preserving balance, established while electoral autonomy acknowledging. Document emperor's broader imperial framework privileges granting and appointments making right confirmed, while electoral territories' internal governance interfering authority restricting. Major imperial decisions, electoral consent receive requirement, imperial authority constitutional check created arbitrary, previous imperial periods sometimes characterized governance kind prevented. The Golden Bull had done more than just create rules for electing emperors. It had fundamentally redefined what the Holy Roman Empire was. No longer a unified state under strong imperial control, Germany was now a federation of semi-independent territories held together by common institutions and shared traditions. This system would endure until 1806. Imperial cities' development distinct constitutional category during Charles's reign reflected urban communities growing German economic and political life importance. Emperor rather territorial princes, direct allegiance owed cities' emergence, German political system challenging traditional feudal hierarchies new element created, while emperor alternative support and revenue sources providing. These imperial cities, mid-14th century systematic organization, established institutional frameworks centuries German urban development influencing. Imperial cities' constitutional status represented medieval political theory, significant innovation, political communities, governmental authority possessed without traditional feudal structures, fitting category created. These cities' extensive self-governance rights granted charters received, including own officials electing authority, own legal systems establishing, and own diplomatic relations certain limitations within conducting. Imperial cities and emperor direct relationship territorial princes traditionally royal authority and local communities intermediaries served bypassed. Nuremberg's most important imperial city emergence during Charles's reign reflected both strategic location and economic prosperity. Cities northern and southern Germany connecting major trade routes, intersection position, crucial commercial activities, center made while skilled craftsmen and innovative manufacturing techniques, extensive urban development supported wealth generated. Imperial privileges, Nuremberg 1350s and 1360s during received free imperial city status confirmed, while additional political and economic autonomy enhanced rights granted. Nuremberg's governmental institutions development during period urban administration model created other imperial cities throughout empire influencing. Cities' council system, different economic and social groups representation balanced, effective governance provided, while commercial prosperity necessary, political stability maintaining. Sophisticated Nuremberg developed legal system, commercial law, and procedural efficiency emphasis, with Central Europe throughout merchants and craftsmen attracted, while other regions, urban law development influenced legal precedents establishing. Frankfurt Main's imperial elections permanent site designation Golden Bull reflected central location and electoral prince's meeting place established role. Main river cities position electoral various territories, traveling convenient transportation access provided, while substantial commercial infrastructure, large electoral assemblies, accompanied entourages accommodate could. Economic benefits. Frankfurt electoral assemblies hosting derived most prosperous empire commercial centers, one development contributed. Frankfurt's political institutions transformation electoral period demonstrated complex imperial cities and broader constitutional system developed relationships. Cities' electoral assemblies during security and accommodation providing responsibility. Sophisticated imperial authorities coordination required while free imperial city autonomous status maintaining. Electoral Assembly specialized facilities development, including secure meeting halls and electoral entourages. Accommodation, electoral process, immediate needs beyond broader commercial and political purposes served infrastructure created. Hanseatic League mid-14th century emergence, major political and economic force represented another German urban organization. Significant development. Golden Bull embodied constitutional reforms parallel occurred. League's sophisticated commercial cooperation and collective defense system, alternative political organization model, created both territorial and imperial authority challenged, while participating cities' unprecedented prosperity generating. Hanseatic influence throughout Northern Europe expansion during Charles's reign demonstrated urban cooperation, effectiveness challenges, individual cities' capabilities exceeded addressing. Lübeck's Hanseatic League leading city role reflected strategic position and commercial organization innovative approaches. Cities standardized commercial practices and legal procedures, development frameworks Baltic region throughout trade, facilitated created, while Lübeck commercial empire de facto capital, established traditional princes, territorial holdings rivaled. Diplomatic relationships, Lübeck Scandinavian kingdoms, Polish duchies, and Russian principalities maintained, demonstrated Hanseatic influence international scope and urban communities could develop sophisticated political capabilities. Military capabilities. Hanseatic League during period developed reflected League's recognition commercial prosperity, effective both piracy and territorial interference defense required. Specialized warships. Baltic conditions designed construction. Hanseatic fleets, merchant convoys protecting allowed, while northern seas throughout military power projecting. Naval resources league cities coordination among collective defense system created territorial princes individual maritime interests protecting efforts than more effective proved. The Western Schism, 1378 began German political and religious institutions, unprecedented challenges created, Golden Bull established constitutional arrangements tested. Competing papal Rome Avignon claimants emergence Christian Europe political lines divided spiritual and temporal authority, traditional relationships complicated. German schism response. Both Golden Bull placed imperial authority, constitutional limitations, and territorial princes matters local interests, affecting growing independence reflected. Initial German schism reaction demonstrated extent 14th century constitutional reforms, imperial authority and ecclesiastical affairs relationship altered. Unlike earlier periods, German emperors' papal conflicts decisive roles played. Golden Bull established constitutional limitations, unilateral imperial action prevented, while electoral princes and other territorial authorities consultation required. German ecclesiastical and secular authorities, among opinion diversity regarding competing papal claims, reflected previous century developed decentralized political system nature. The crisis would continue into the 15th century, creating opportunities for profound institutional changes that would reshape the relationship between church and state throughout German territories. But through it all, the Golden Bull's constitutional framework endured, proving Charles IV's genius in creating flexible institutions that could adapt to challenges their creators never imagined. Western Schism resolution through Council of Constance marked not only German diplomatic capabilities' triumph, but economic and social transformations, culmination nearly 4 centuries, German society reshaping. Period between 1000–1400 witnessed German history, most profound economic revolution since Roman Empire collapse, fundamentally rural and urban populations, relationship altering while wealth and political power, new forms traditional feudal hierarchies challenged creating. Agricultural revolution, early 11th century began provided all subsequent economic developments foundation, German territories, subsistence, farming communities, collection, transforming Europe's most productive agricultural regions one into. 3-field system introduction, medieval farming practices most significant innovation represented, traditional 2-field half-all arable land each year left rotation replacing. New system under, farmers' holdings 3 sections divided. 1 winter crops, wheat or rye planted, another spring crops oats and barley including 3rd soil fertility restore left. This arrangement, agricultural productivity approximately 50% increased, while more diverse poor harvests during famine risk reduced crop yields providing. 3-field system implementation sophisticated village communities coordination among required rotation schedule, collective planting times and crop selection decision-making demanded. Village assemblies complex field usage governing regulations developed. Detailed common grazing fallow periods during rights managing and communal agreements violated farmers' penalties establishing provisions with. System success, precise individual holdings, boundaries, maintaining, depended while entire communities affected collective activities, coordinating. Village these responsibilities, managing administrative structures, development. New local governance forms, feudal lordship, independently operated, created while essential agricultural productivity, large populations, supporting, maintaining. Heavy-wheeled plow. 12th century adoption, German agricultural practices revolutionized northern and central Germany, covered dense clay soils, cultivating farmers enabling. Unlike light Mediterranean plows previously used, heavy plow iron plowshare tough soil cutting through capable featured, moldboard earth completely turned over, and wheels plowing operations during more precise control allowed. Equipment effectiveness 6 to 8 oxen teams required. Sufficient individually lacked farmers' draft animals, cooperative arrangements, effective plowing necessitating. Plow teams formation, village communities, new social and economic relationships created farmers, oxen pooled, and agricultural efficiency maximizing labor coordinated. These arrangements work schedules, maintenance responsibilities, and participating households, costs and benefits, distribution detailed agreements required. Plow teams managing complexity, village officials, specialized development, agricultural activities, organizing and equipment usage, and field access disputes, resolving responsible LED. Cooperative plowing economic benefits, substantial heavy plow, previous methods than more thoroughly fields prepare could, while per acre cultivated fewer total labor hours requiring. Forests, agricultural expansion, systematic clearing 12th and 13th centuries during represented European history, largest environmental transformations 1, millions woodland acres productive farmland converting. German territories, extensive population periods earlier during forest resources possessed, remained largely unexploited when sparse populations and limited agricultural technology easily worked. Soils cultivation restricted. Population growth, agricultural improvements accompanied additional farmland pressure created, while technological advances forest clearing economically first-time feasible made. Forest clearance process, substantial initial labor and equipment investments required teams large trees, felling workers, stumps removing, undergrowth clearing, and cultivation soil preparing had. Monastic communities clearance projects organizing crucial roles played, capital resources and coordinated necessary large-scale land development labor providing. Cistercian order forest clearance particularly effective proved, previously uninhabited regions, new monasteries establishing, and woodland productive agricultural estates converting innovative techniques developing. Systematic Cistercian monasteries approached land development, employed model agricultural communities created secular throughout German territories, clearance projects influenced. New villages cleared forest areas, establishment, careful long-term agricultural success, and community sustainability ensuring planning required. Village founders' water access, soil quality, transportation connections, and defensive positions. Factors, sites, new settlements selecting, considering had. Cleared villages layout, typically standardized agricultural efficiency, maximized patterns followed while housing, workshops, and community facilities, adequate space providing. Regular field systems, many cleared villages characterized rational planning. Older settlements, irregular gradually centuries developed patterns, found differed markedly. Approaches reflected. Legal frameworks, forest clearance, and village establishment governed new land tenure categories. Traditional feudal relationships challenged, created. Clearance settlers often established villages farmers, then more favorable terms received, including reduced labor obligations, limited feudal dues, and greater personal freedom. These arrangements, substantial clearance projects, involved risks and investments reflected, settlers' dangerous frontier regions. Colonists develop unused lands, competed lords, bargaining power possessed well. Clearance communities' success, more flexible social arrangements, economic advantages, demonstrated broader German territories throughout rural social structures, changes influencing. Subscribe to Flow of History and discover how these medieval transformations laid the groundwork for modern Germany's economic powerhouse status. Merchant guilds, 12th century rise urban communities throughout German territories, transformed economic organization, new forms created. Similar trades engaged merchants, these associations, comprehensive regulation systems, mutual support, and collective members' economic prospects. Enhanced bargaining developed while urban governments' political influence establishing. Guild system traditional feudal obligations, based economic relationships, fundamental departure represented market-based commercial, rather agricultural principles according operated associations creating. Cologne Merchant Guild. Northern Europe most influential commercial organizations one emerged. Baltic Sea to Mediterranean extended trade relationships, controlling. Guilds' commercial practices, systematic regulation, standardized weights, measures, and quality controls, long-distance trade, facilitated established while merchants and consumers, fraudulent practices, both protecting. Organizations' collective purchasing power, members, suppliers, and transport providers, favorable terms negotiate, allowed. Individual costs reducing while commercial operations, reliability improving. Guilds permanent major Europe throughout commercial centers, trading posts, establishment commercial relationships network, created Cologne merchants, substantial profits, generated while major international trade center city establishing. Craft guilds, 13th century development, additional urban organization forms, created production activities, regulated while urban communities, social and political structures established. Unlike merchant guilds, primarily trade relationships focused, craft guilds, respective industries, production, all aspects controlled. Apprentices training from finished goods, marketing too. Guild system quality control and standardized production techniques emphasis, German craftsmanship reputations, created Europe throughout customers attracted, while guild produced premium prices, goods generating. Goldsmith guilds, major German cities during period developed medieval Europe, most sophisticated production and quality control systems, some established. Guild regulations, metal purity, craftsmanship standards and design elements, detailed requirements specified consistent quality ensured, while fraudulent practices preventing. Lengthy apprenticeship programs, goldsmith guilds required highly skilled craftsmen, luxury goods, producing capable created Paris and Florence established centers, products competed successfully with. Guild system apprenticeship and journeyman status control, clear career progression, maintaining exclusivity, necessary premium pricing paths created while talented individuals attracted. Textile guilds, Augsburg and Nuremberg cities. Such 14th century emerged guild organization effectiveness complex, multiple specialized crafts involved production processes, coordinating demonstrated. High-quality wool cloth production coordination wool merchants, spinners, weavers, dyers, and finishers among required, each specialized skills and equipment possessed whom. Guild system ability. These diverse activities coordinating while quality standards and fair pricing, maintaining integrated production systems created substantial profits, generated while German textile international markets, premium goods products established. Guild system influence purely economic activities beyond social welfare, religious observance, and urban communities' political participation encompassed extended. Guild members, mutual assistance funds, widows, orphans, and disabled craftsmen support provided contributed, social safety, traditional feudal relationships dependence reduced networks creating. Guilds' religious festivals, charitable activities, and urban construction projects, sponsorship community welfare commitment demonstrated while responsible civic institutions status establishing. Political influence guilds, urban governments participation, exercised new democratic participation forms, created traditional municipal affairs. Aristocratic control challenged. Mining operations, Harz Mountains, 12th century development, Germany's Europe's major precious metals, sources one emergence initiated, imperial power economic foundations fundamentally altering. Substantial silver deposits, Goslar region discovery Europe throughout investment and technical expertise, attracted unprecedented scale and sophistication mining operations creating. Technical challenges, deep shaft mining involved innovative engineering solutions required, including advanced drainage systems, ventilation networks, and ore processing facilities. Medieval technology cutting edge represented. Rammelsburg Mine Goslar near medieval Europe, largest silver-producing operation became imperial military campaigns supported revenues generating while continent throughout merchants and craftsmen attracting. Mines sophisticated organizational structure excavation, ore processing, smelting, and transportation, responsible specialized workers included, complex hundreds workers employed, and imperial coffers substantial profits generated industrial operation creating. Technical innovations Ramelsburg developed, including improved smelting techniques and mechanical ore crushing equipment. Europe throughout mining operations influenced, while German metallurgical processes expertise establishing. Mining operations Bohemia, 13th century expansion into additional precious metal sources created German rulers' economic power enhanced, while broader European monetary systems contributing. Kutna Hora silver mines Central Europe throughout standard currency became coins produced. While Bohemian mining operations developed technical expertise, regional industrial development influenced. Bohemian silver mining generated wealth 14th century Prague during characterized cultural flowering economic foundation provided, mining development, broader economic and social impacts, demonstrating. Hydraulic engineering techniques. German mining operations development significant technological advances represented Europe throughout industrial development influenced. Elaborate water-powered ore crushing, bellows operation and drainage systems, machinery construction, sophisticated mechanical principles, understanding and equipment construction, precision craftsmanship required. Water-powered stamp mills, German engineers or processing developed efficiency and consistency manual methods match couldn't levels achieved. While hydraulic drainage, deep mines operational kept advanced broader infrastructure development, influenced engineering capabilities demonstrated. Banking and credit systems, 13th and 14th centuries emergence new commercial organization forms long-distance trade, facilitated created while economic expansion capital providing. Commercial relationships growing complexity, German mining operations, precious metals, increased availability, combined financial traditional money-changing operations, capabilities exceeded services demand created. Sophisticated credit instruments and international banking relationships. Development German commercial practices transformed while broader European financial networks German merchants integrating. The medieval German economy had become one of Europe's most sophisticated and dynamic, creating wealth that would support the cultural and political developments of the early modern period. Fugger family Augsburg emergence, Europe's most influential banking dynasties 14th century during financial techniques and international relationships, European banking centuries dominate would developed. Families textile trading initial success banking activities expansion capital foundation provided, while risk management and international operations, systematic approach throughout Europe and beyond, extended financial empire created. Fugger's double-entry bookkeeping development, standardized credit instruments, and international currency exchange systems, Europe throughout banking development influenced practices established, while enormous mining, real estate, and political influence expansion supported profits generating. Italian merchants, German banking development role, medieval commercial relationships, international nature, and financial political boundaries across techniques, transfer reflected. Italian banking houses major German cities, 13th century permanent operations established, sophisticated financial instruments and German commercial capabilities, enhanced international connections bringing. Medici banks, Bruges and London operations, financial German merchants, international markets connected networks, created while expanded commercial activities supported credit facilities providing. German trading companies, 14th century development, German commercial organization, growing sophistication, and German merchants' international trade networks, increasing integration demonstrated. These companies. Italian banking techniques elements German organizational traditions combined, hybrid complex commercial relationships managing highly effective, proved institutions creating. Systematic German trading companies approach risk management, quality control, and international operations employed competitive Europe throughout established commercial powers, challenge-enabled advantages established. Hanseatic League's sophisticated credit systems and commercial law development institutional Northern Europe throughout trade, facilitated frameworks created while international German commercial practices standards establishing. League's commercial procedures standardization, legal frameworks, and dispute resolution mechanisms, transaction costs reduced while commercial relationships reliability increasing. Hanseatic commercial law development. Northern Europe throughout legal development influenced while centuries European economic development influence would international commercial regulation precedents creating. German religious life transformation 800–1400 period. During broader political and economic changes, medieval society reshaped paralleled, yet German territories' broader European Christianity framework, unique position reflected distinctive own characteristics possessed. Religious reforms, German monasteries, 10th and 11th centuries swept through external sources originated, but local conditions and traditions ways adapted distinctively. German monastic organization and spiritual practice forms created. Cluniac reform movement, Burgundian Cluny Monastery 910, began German territories Otto IV reign during reached. Time German monasteries considerable wealth and political influence achieved arriving. But often spiritual process mission compromised had. Ottonian church system, bishops and abbots territorial administrators and military commanders made, which imperial political needs served institutional arrangements, created while contemplative and aesthetic originally monastic foundations, motivated ideals sometimes neglecting. Cluniac reformers' arrival, German monasteries' spiritual focus, renewing opportunity offered while economic resources and social influence maintaining. Hirsau Monastery, Black Forest. Most important, Cluny Reform German Territories Center emerged, relatively modest Benedictine house, transforming empire most influential religious institutions one into. Abbot William Hirsau, 1069 leadership assumed under. Monastery Cluniac constitutions adopted, while German conditions and traditions them adapting. William's reform principles, systematic implementation model, dozens other German monasteries' influence would created, spiritual discipline maintained reformed houses network establishing, while broader cultural and intellectual developments contributing. Hirsau reforms, strict rule St. Benedict observance emphasized, particular divine office attention, communal prayer, and aesthetic many German monasteries previous century during relaxed practices had. Reformed daily schedule monks, 8 each 24-hour period throughout prayer services participating required, matins dawn before beginning and compline sunset after concluding. These services conducted precision, including monks' liturgical chant, careful training and elaborate ceremonial protocols, maintenance, spiritual attracted intensity atmosphere created both religious vocations and lay patronage. Intellectual activities, Hirsau reform period during flourished rigorous spiritual discipline and scholarly achievement compatibility demonstrated. Monastery scriptorium. 11th century finest illuminated manuscripts, some produced, including biblical commentaries, liturgical texts, and historical theological sophistication, artistic excellence combined chronicles. Hirsau developed school German territories throughout students attracted, educational major cities, cathedral schools, rivaled institution creating while distinctively monastic character maintaining. Hirsau's influence southwestern Germany, late 11th century throughout expansion, reformed monasteries network, created common spiritual practices shared while local conditions and patronage relationships adapting. St. Georgian Monastery, Hirsau Daughter House, 1084 founded Eastern Black Forest reform principles established while manuscript production and theological education, specialized expertise developing. St. Georgian Community, particularly historical writing renowned became, contemporary events documented while Christian salvation history broader framework them, interpreting chronicles producing. Cistercian Reform Movement, German territories, 12th century reached even monastic renewal. Radical approach more represented, austere living conditions emphasizing manual labor and wealth and political traditional Benedictine monasteries characterized involvement, systematic rejection. Cistercian emphasis, agricultural development and technological innovation, German nobles' unused lands developed seeking while aesthetic religious institutions supporting ideals embodied appealed. First German Cistercian Foundation, Camp 1123, established rapid expansion period initiated dozens following century during German territories throughout Cistercian houses, established C. Wood. The medieval period was drawing to close, but the religious, economic, and political transformations of these centuries had created the foundations upon which early modern Germany would be built. Cistercian Monastery Maulbronn, 1147. Northern Black Forest Hills founded distinctive German Cistercian communities, 12th century during developed characteristics exemplified. Monasteries' agricultural development systematic approach thousands previously uncultivated land acres, productive farms, vineyards, and fish-transformed ponds, substantial revenues generated while local populations employment providing. Technological innovations Maulbronn monks developed, including advanced water management systems, improved agricultural techniques, and sophisticated food processing methods, region throughout economic development influenced, while monastic discipline practical benefits demonstrating. German Cistercian monasteries' architectural achievements, both orders' austere aesthetics commitment and monastic communities developed sophisticated engineering capabilities reflected. Maulbronn's church, late 12th century, constructed Cistercian architectural principles, favored geometric simplicity, combined innovative interior remarkable beauty, and acoustic excellence created spaces' structural techniques. Monasteries' cloister, elegant arcades, and precisely proportioned spaces its with, contemplation-conducive environment provided, while German stonemasons achieved high craftsmanship level demonstrating. Cistercian monasteries' economic impact immediate territories far beyond extended systematic agricultural development approach and extensive trading relationships. Regional economic development influenced commercial networks created. Eberbach Monastery, Rheingau developed winemaking techniques, regions some Europe's finest white wines producing reputation established, while vineyard management and wine marketing systematic approach R.H. Ine Valley, throughout viticulture influenced commercial practices created. Monasteries' wine cellars, monastic buildings beneath hillsides carved thousands consistent, proper aging necessary temperatures maintaining while barrels store could. Mendicant orders German territories 13th century arrival religious life fundamental shift marked urban communities growing importance and city environments adapted pastoral care, new forms need reflected. Franciscan and Dominican orders major German cities 1220s and 1230s established innovative preaching, education, and charitable approaches work urban populations' spiritual needs addressed, while traditional monastic frameworks outside operated religious new community forms creating. Franciscan Presence Cologne, 1223. Established, orders founding 7 just years. Mendicant communities' rapid expansion and urban religious life, immediate impact demonstrated. Franciscan St. Clara Church mid-13th century constructed mendicant architecture preaching space liturgical complexity overemphasized model provided. Large congregations accommodate could interior arrangements creating, while preachers and audiences effective between communication facilitating. Simple Franciscan buildings characterized architectural style orders apostolic poverty commitment, reflected while urban ministry spatial requirements practical solutions providing. Dominican establishment major German cities, particularly educational activities and intellectual development focused, cathedral schools rivaled schools creating, while mendicant preaching and pastoral care emphasis maintaining. Dominican House Paris, sophisticated theological European educational practices throughout influenced curricula developed, German Dominican communities' local conditions, these programs adapted, while broader intellectual developments contributing. Dominican School Cologne, particularly philosophical instruction renowned, became Northern Europe throughout students attracting, while scholastic theology, distinctive approaches developing. Mendicant preaching. German urban religious life impact formal educational institutions beyond popular personal devotion and direct spiritual emphasized experience. Religious movements encompassed, extended. Mendicant friars, German vernacular languages delivered sermons, sophisticated theological lay audiences, accessible concepts made, while clerical extensive mediation require, didn't religious practice forms encouraging. Lay religious confraternities major German cities, 13th century development mendicant spirituality influence, reflected while urban social structures operated religious new community forms creating. Beguine communities. German cities 13th century emerged another religious innovative life form, both mendicant influences and German urban society distinctive characteristics reflected. These religious women communities dedicated houses together, lived while property rights maintaining and formal traditional monastic life characterize vows avoiding. Beguines' charitable work emphasis, textile production, and spiritual devotion. Religious appealed life form. Urban women created while broader community welfare and economic development contributing. Vernacular religious literature, 12th and 13th centuries development. Both monastic and mendicant spirituality influence and German literary culture growing sophistication reflected. Religious poetry emergence, mystical treatises, and devotional German rather Latin-written texts, sophisticated lay audiences accessible religious ideas made while German cultural traditions reflected religious distinctive expression forms creating. Hildegard Bingen works whose visionary theological sophistication, poetic beauty combined writings, German religious literature precedents established while German religious intellectual capabilities demonstrating. Nibelungenlied early 13th century composed medieval German epic poetry, most significant achievement represented heroic Germanic tribal culture, derived traditions combined with Christian contemporary religious influences reflected moral frameworks. Anonymous poet this masterwork created oral Germanic great migrations and early medieval period tribal conflicts, memories preserved traditions upon Drew, while 13th century Christian values and social structures reflect materials these adapting. Resulting epic martial valor and personal Germanic heroic ideals characterized loyalty combined with Christian divine providence concepts and moral responsibility. The medieval centuries had created not just political institutions and economic systems, but a rich cultural tapestry that would define German identity for centuries to come. As Germany moved toward the early modern period, these medieval foundations would prove both blessing and curse, providing continuity and tradition, but also creating divisions and conflicts that would shape German history into the modern era. Part 18. German eastward expansion. 11th and 12th centuries during occurred defensive Slavic tribal confederation warfare against context within centuries, Frankish and Saxon military pressure despite independence maintained had. Polabian Slavs, Elbe-Oder. Rivers territories between inhabited sophisticated military capabilities and political organizations, German expansion, resist-enabled developed, while traditional religious practices and social structures maintaining. Fortified settlements these Slavic peoples constructed, burgs known as elaborate earthwork defenses and prolonged sieges withstand, could wooden palisades featured while regional political and economic activities centers served. Systematic German rulers' eastern expansion developed approach earlier conquest and colonization attempts, temporary only success, achieved learned lessons reflected. Military conquest, solely relying, rather than followed German administrative systems imposition by new approach, gradual German agricultural permanent establish, could colonists' settlement emphasized communities while potential Slavic resistance defensive against capabilities maintaining. Strategy required careful military commanders, ecclesiastical authorities, and civilian administrators, coordination, diverse successful colonization efforts, necessary expertise provide could who. Margrave's role Eastern expansion organizing German military and administrative institutions 11th century evolution during demonstrated. These frontier commanders, king directly from territories, held extensive military and judicial jurisdictions within authority, possessed frontier warfare and colonization-associated complex challenges, managing specialized techniques developed. Brandenburg Margrave, whose territory Havel and Spree rivers crucial crossing points controlled, German settlers recruiting systematic procedures established, while Slavic resistance movements military against pressure maintaining. Albert Baer Brandenburg, Margrave 1157 became who? Eastern expansion new approach exemplified military effectiveness, systematic colonization policies combined. Campaigns Slavic Prince Pribislav against sophisticated both conventional warfare and German conquered lasting territories, control over establishing necessary political negotiations, understanding demonstrated. Albert's decision, German colonists favorable settlement terms grant, while certain Slavic traditional respecting rights purely earlier periods achieved coercive, then more durable approaches, proved expansion model created. Agricultural colonization. German military expansion accompanied territories' eastern landscape and economy through advanced farming techniques and systematic land development introduction transformed. German settlers brought three-field agricultural system, heavy-wheeled plow and sophisticated previous Slavic farming methods accomplished, then higher agricultural productivity enabled forest clearing techniques them with. Marshlands, systematic drainage and dikes and irrigation systems, construction, additional arable created land, while German colonists possessed engineering capabilities, demonstrating. New villages, eastern territories. Establishment standardized practical considerations and colonial settlements specifically developed legal frameworks reflected both patterns followed. Typical German colonial village central green individual farmsteads surrounded featured long strip fields village center from outward extending ensure each household different soil types and water sources access possessed to. This arrangement Waldhufendorf known or forest village system agricultural efficiency maximized, as while defensive villages protect themselves military conflict periods during enabled arrangements creating. German colonial settlers' legal status, traditional feudal arrangements significantly differed. Both dangerous frontier regions, colonists attract need and previously uninhabited areas, self-sufficient establishing practical communities requirements reflected. Colonial settlers, typically holdings hereditary tenure, received annual rent payments exchange in rather labor traditional manorialism characterized services then. This arrangement, colonial charters specified that settlers and lords both rights and obligations. More flexible settlers, economic relationships created while original German territories enjoyed, might have then greater personal freedom providing. Magdeburg law 12th century emerged as German colonial settlements, most influential legal framework, urban and rural community organization, all aspects covering comprehensive regulations provided. This legal system, originally Magdeburg City, early 12th century, during developed municipal governance standardized procedures, commercial regulation, and judicial diverse local conditions adapted could while consistent legal principles, maintaining administration established. Magdeburg law, systematic eastern territories throughout application unified trade and communication, facilitated legal framework, created while multiple political jurisdictions across conducting business-associated transaction costs, reducing German legal traditions dominant colonial regions system establishing. Urban foundations. German eastern expansion accompanied medieval period most ambitious city planning. Some projects represented, rational according designed commercial and administrative centers principles, creating rather organic, older European cities characterized growth patterns then. These planned cities' regular street grids featured standardized building lots and markets, churches, and governmental buildings designated areas. Urban design principles, sophisticated understanding reflected. Systematic German colonists employed approach city planning urban, more efficient and healthier many older European cities than environments created while regional economic development support could commercial centers establishing. Lubeck City, Henry Lyon, 1159, refounded earlier Slavic settlement site on, planned urban German eastern territories, created communities, colonizers exemplified. City's strategic trave and Wakenitz rivers, confluence location both overland and maritime trade routes, access provided, while planned wide streets layout included. Substantial building lots and large-scale commercial accommodate could central market square activities. Legal privileges Henry Lubeck citizens granted, including traditional feudal obligations exemption and own municipal officials elect right, throughout Northern Europe, merchants and craftsmen attracted while major commercial center city establishing. Lubeck law, late 12th century, developed alternative Magdeburg law legal framework, provided maritime commercial communities' needs specifically adapted. This legal system commercial regulation emphasized maritime law and merchant associations' rights, while German colonial law, basic personal freedom principles, maintaining and hereditary land tenure regarding. Lubeck law, systematic Baltic coastal regions throughout application, unified trade, facilitated commercial zone, created while areas previously Slavic customary, according governed law, German legal traditions establishing. The Ostsiedlung, the German eastern expansion, had transformed not just territories, but created new forms of law, governance, and society that would influence Central European development for centuries. But this expansion would soon face its greatest challenge yet. Teutonic Orders Prussia, 13th century establishment, German eastern expansion, most systematic and militarized approach represented. Crusading warfare, religious motivation, sophisticated territorial conquest and colonization techniques combining. Orders origins. Third Crusade associated medical and military activities, members extensive both military operations and conquered territories, administration experience provided, while religious vows and centralized organization, institutional secular colonization efforts exceeded capabilities created. Invitation, Duke Conrad Masovia, 1226. Teutonic Order extended desperate Polish rulers situation, ongoing pagan Prussian tribes, conflicts faced reflected. These Baltic peoples' independence and traditional religious maintained practices centuries. Polish military pressure despite, while sophisticated military capabilities and local terrain knowledge, conventional feudal armies, formidable opponents made. Prussians' guerrilla warfare tactics use combined elaborate marshland and forest environments, fortifications, construction, Polish expansion resist enabled, while tribal political structures and religious traditions maintaining. Hermann von Salza, Teutonic Order. Grandmaster, 1210-1239 served, who, Golden Bull Rimini, Emperor Frederick II, 1226 with negotiated which, order sovereign any pagan Prussians from conquer might territories over authority granted. This unprecedented religious order, political authority grant both Frederick's Italian conflicts preoccupation and order's unique complex military and administrative challenges, managing capabilities recognition reflected. Bull's provisions, Legal Crusader Independent State Creation Foundation established canon and practical frontier governance requirements, both law from derived principles according operate, would that. Systematic Prussian territories conquest Teutonic Order 1230-1283 between conducted sophisticated military planning and diverse military resources, effective coordination demonstrated. Order's strategy fortified bases construction emphasized supply depots and administrative centers serve, could while Prussian strongholds against offensive operations, conducting secure positions providing. Stone castles order constructed, advanced local conditions, adapted defensive architecture featuring, permanent German couldn't presence assertions represented easily, Prussian counterattacks eliminated b. Marienburg Castle, 1270s, during Order's primary fortress and administrative center constructed as sophisticated military architecture. Teutonic Knights frontier warfare developed, exemplified. Castle's massive walls, elaborate gate systems, and strategically positioned towers prolonged sieges withstand, could defensive capabilities created while large garrisons and administrative staffs accommodation providing. Complexes military, religious and governmental facilities, integration orders unique, both military organization and sovereign political authority character, as reflected. Colonization policies. Teutonic Order conquered Prussian territories, implemented systematic settlement recruitment, careful ethnic and religious region, inhabited diverse communities, attention combined. Order's recruitment efforts. German throughout empire settlers attracted, while favorable Polish, Lithuanian, and even converted Prussian settlers grant terms, willingness, ethnically diverse colonial-created communities. Systematic German law and administrative practices application gradually these territories' broader German cultural sphere integral parts transformed while local traditions and customs certain accommodations maintaining. Economic development. Teutonic Order. Prussia promoted both orders' military activities, support revenue need, and prosperous additional settlers attract, could communities creating commitment reflected, systematic agricultural resources development, including marshlands, drainage, and new farming communities establishment, productive larger populations support could agricultural regions created while export surplus production generating. Orders craft production and commercial activities promotion, particularly Königsberg and Danzig, such cities in, established other parts Europe commercial centers compete, could urban centers created. Administrative system, Teutonic Order. Prussia governing developed unique religious, military, and secular governmental principles, synthesis orders' distinctive institutional character reflected. Orders' hierarchical, clear command chains and systematic decision-making procedures structure diverse governmental activities, effective coordination provided while monastic organizations characterized religious discipline maintaining. Military commanders, administrative officials, and religious authorities unified command structure, integration, governmental, most secular territorial rulers exceeded capabilities created. Cultural transformation. Prussia Teutonic rule under occurred systematic German religious practices, introduction, educational institutions, and artistic traditions, while local Christian conversion accepted populations, certain accommodations maintaining involved. Orders, churches, monasteries, and schools, construction institutional cultural transmission frameworks created while indigenous broader Christian European cultural community participate populations opportunities providing. Vernacular literature and artistic both German and local elements, incorporated production development distinctive Prussian society, complex ethnic and religious composition, reflected cultural syntheses created. Teutonic influence Livonia, late 13th century expansion into German colonization. Baltic coastal, later Latvia and Estonia become wood regions efforts extended. These territories, conquest and colonization, Prussian different geographic and demographic conditions techniques adaptation required, while existing Christian populations, different pagan Prussia existed, then challenges and opportunities created. Systematic German urban centers and agricultural Livonia throughout settlements, establishment German cultural northern influence extension created Prussian Baltic commercial broader networks territories connected. Riga city, which Livonia German influence primary center became, German urban planning and commercial organization effectiveness, previously underdeveloped prosperous regions communities creating demonstrated. City's strategic Daugava River mouth position, extensive interior Eastern Europe regions, connected river systems access provided, while planned legal layout and privileges throughout Northern Europe merchants and craftsmen attracted. Riga major commercial center development economic German settlers and indigenous German commercial and legal practices, adapted populations, Members both attracted opportunities created. The Teutonic Order had created a crusader state unlike any other, a militarized theocracy that would dominate the Eastern Baltic for 2 centuries. But its ultimate fate would be sealed on a battlefield in Poland in 1410. Conflicts, Teutonic Order and Poland and Lithuania, growing power between 14th century, emerged both German colonization efforts' success and Eastern Europe changing political dynamics reflected. Polish royal authority, Piast and later Angevin dynasties under consolidation, more formidable previously Polish territories characterized fragmented duchies than opponent created, while Lithuanian Grand Duchy major regional power emergence new Teutonic expansion efforts challenges created. Marriage alliance Poland and Lithuania between 1386 formalized powerful Teutonic territorial holdings and political independence. Unprecedented threats posed coalition created. Tannenberg Battle. July 15, 1410, fought between Teutonic Order combined forces and Polish-Lithuanian King Władysław Jagiello, commanded army medieval period largest and most decisive military engagements one represented. Battle's outcome fundamentally Eastern Europe power balance alter would while German eastward expansion decline beginning marking. Engagement approximately 60,000 combatants involved, medieval battles largest one making, sophisticated both tactical arrangements previous century developed military innovations reflected. Teutonic forces, battle assembled orders military development culmination represented, including heavily armored cavalry, professional infantry, and artillery order, acquired demonstrated technological units capabilities. Grandmaster Ulrich von Jungingen's tactical plan, traditional heavily armored cavalry charges, advantages emphasized while defensive orders artillery and crossbow units' effectiveness maximize, could positions incorporating. Orders military organization with disciplined command structure and coordinated tactical procedures, previously less organized opponents against effective proven and even large Polish-Lithuanian army against victory-achieving capable seemed. Polish-Lithuanian tactical approach, both coalition within, represented diverse military traditions and Teutonic tactical predictability advantage, took innovative adaptations reflected. Army's composition included Polish heavy cavalry, Lithuanian light cavalry, various ethnic backgrounds infantry units, and specialized Tatar horse archers whose mobility and firepower Teutonic formations gaps exploit could troops like. King Władysław's decision, feigned retreat tactics employ combined different ethnic units, coordinated attacks with tactical Teutonic orders effectively respond ability exceeded complexity created. Battle's decisive phase occurred when Lithuanian forces' apparent retreat Teutonic cavalry pursuing drew units' attacks into their formation integrity disrupted, allowing Polish heavy cavalry and infantry reserves coordinated, Teutonic exposed positions, counterattacks against launch. Grandmaster Ulrich von Jungingen death during intense fighting, Teutonic forces demoralized while primary tactical coordination eliminating, organized resistance collapse and most Teutonic military units destruction leading. Teutonic losses magnitude, including orders leadership most, and professional military forces substantial portion, military disaster order never fully recover from what created. Tannenberg defeat immediate consequences. Far military considerations beyond extended Eastern Europe, political and demographic dynamics, fundamental changes encompass. Teutonic military capabilities destruction, continued German eastward expansion, primary force eliminated while Polish and Lithuanian territorial recovery and expansion opportunities creating. Orders prestige and military effectiveness loss new recruits and Western Europe financial support attractability reduced. While captured knights, enormous ransoms, required financial orders economic stability, compromised burdens created. Thorn Peace 1411 concluded between Teutonic Order and Polish-Lithuanian coalition, territorial and financial changed power balance, reflected arrangements established while Order's core Prussian territories maintain allowed. Treaties provisions, substantial territorial concessions, and enormous orders resources strained financial payments required while disputed border regions, Polish suzerainty establishing. Agreements Polish and Lithuanian territorial claims, recognition, aggressive German eastward expansion effective end marked, and German-Slavic relations more defensive phase beginning. Tannenberg defeat German eastern expansion, long-term impact, immediate territorial and political consequences, beyond extended region demographic and cultural development, fundamental changes encompass. Reduced German military disaster followed immigration existing many areas where German settlement previously expanding Slavic populations, demographic predominance maintain allowed. German political control, weakening Slavic cultural and religious German expansion period during suppressed traditions, revival opportunities created, while German legal and administrative institutions reduced effectiveness, alternative develop or resurface systems allowed. Teutonic Order transformation aggressive expansionist organization from defensive territorial state 15th century during into both military defeat practical consequences and broader European political and religious developments changes reflected. Orders increasing. Mercenary forces reliance rather own Knight brothers than distinctive military capabilities erosion demonstrated, while conventional diplomatic neighboring powers relationships growing involvement crusading organization from conventional territorial principality evolution into marked. Orders governmental functions, gradual secularization, and diverse religious and ethnic territories within populations, accommodation. Original crusading ideals, motivated Eastern expansion, fundamental departures represented. The age of the Teutonic Knights was ending, and with it, the age of German eastward expansion. But the seeds they had planted, the cities, the laws, the culture, would endure for centuries. Teutonic Order Tannenberg, following weakening Eastern Europe power vacuum, created broader Holy Roman Empire throughout institutional crises, unprecedented coincided. Early 15th century witnessed traditional authorities' unprecedented challenges as Western schism continued Christian Europe divide, while recurring plague outbreaks and climatic economic deterioration, disruption centuries medieval German society, sustained social fabric strained. These multiple crises convergence fundamental institutional reforms that spiritual and temporal authority throughout German territories relationship reshape would opportunities created. Council Constance 1414-1418 convened Imperial City Lake Constance on medieval period most significant ecclesiastical assembly represented and sophisticated German political institutions developed diplomatic capabilities demonstrated. Council's primary Western schism resolving objective delicate competing papal claimants, secular rulers, and ecclesiastical papal division preceding decades during conflicting loyalties, developed authorities who representatives among negotiations required. Constance meeting site selection both cities' strategic location and international diplomatic gatherings hosting established reputation reflected. While German representatives' active participation empires continued European ecclesiastical affairs, importance demonstrated. Emperor Sigismund's role, Council Constance, organizing and presiding over showcased diplomatic skills and political, his reign characterized vision, while revealed practical imperial authority constraints continued constrain. Sigismund's safe conduct, John Hus guarantee, Bohemian reformer whose teachings Central Europe throughout religious and political turmoil created, comprehensive ecclesiastical crisis solutions, finding commitment demonstrated. However, Council's ultimate despite imperial guarantee, Hus execute decision revealed extent ecclesiastical authorities, imperial, when independently could act wishes, church doctrine, and authority, fundamental threats perceived. Conciliar movement Constance emerged from important papal authority limiting precedents established, while general church governance councils, role strengthening. Council's declaration decree haec sancta in authority, superior individual popes to possessed, represented revolutionary ecclesiastical constitutional theory, development centuries. Papal supremacy claims challenged. Systematic council developed procedures, ecclesiastical business conducting, including structured debates, formal voting procedures, and comprehensive record-keeping, institutional both ecclesiastical and secular governmental Europe throughout development influenced frameworks created. Pope Martin V 1417 election. Effectively, Western schism ended while new constitutional papal authority, conciliar balanced oversight arrangements established. Pope's regular general councils, acceptance, and papal certain power limitations, acknowledgement, significant earlier, papal absolute church within authority, claims departures represented. German role. These arrangements, negotiating empires' continued European ecclesiastical affairs, influence demonstrated, while imperial and papal between relationship authority, precedents secular and spiritual powers, conflicts subsequent influence, wood establishing. Hussite Wars Bohemia. John Hus execution following erupted Holy Roman Empire 15th century during faced most serious military and political crisis created. Religious and nationalist Hussite imperial resistance authority elements combined opposition form, conventional military suppression remarkably proved difficult means through. Hussite military innovations, particularly war wagon tactics, development and firearms effective use. Technological and tactical traditional feudal warfare concepts challenged capabilities, demonstrated while similar Central Europe throughout movements inspiring. Kutna Hora Battle, 1421. Hussite, military conventional imperial, against methods, forces effectiveness. Showcased as John Žižka's army employed coordinated infantry and artillery, traditional heavy cavalry advantages, neutralized tactics. Hussite war wagons, defensive arranged formations, mobile fortifications, provide could, while offensive supporting operations represented significant military technology innovations, warfare Europe throughout development influenced. Battle's outcome demonstrated well-organized and motivated infantry forces equipped appropriate weapons and tactical doctrine, traditional feudal, even substantially outnumbered when armies defeat could. Radical religious and social various Hussite factions promoted programs, challenged not only ecclesiastical authority, but also medieval political fundamental systems, social supported hierarchies, Taborites, most extreme Hussite faction, social equality and communal feudal society economic foundations, threatened property ownership advocated, while traditional religious practices, rejection cultural medieval Christian civilization sustained frameworks challenged. These radical peasant and urban Central Europe throughout populations' ideas appealed for demonstrated extent. Medieval society surface stability beneath existed social discontent. Imperial military Hussite Bohemia against campaigns revealed both continued Holy Roman Empire military mobilized capabilities and constrained imperial new political and military dealing organization forms effectiveness limitations. Successive various crusades, emperors Hussite against proclaimed substantial Europe throughout military forces attracted, demonstrating religious continued European appeal warfare nobility among. However, these campaigns achieved results. Repeated decisive failures revealed traditional military new innovative employed opponents, methods, inadequacy tactics against, while familiar supporting terrain popular fought. Hussite crisis, eventual council Basel and Compactada 1436, through resolution, important Christian unity, broader within religious diversity framework, accommodating precedents established. Agreements Hussite communion practices and clerical marriage recognition, unprecedented religious reformers' concessions represented, while fundamental doctrinal unity, maintenance, medieval Christianity, essential preserved framework. Diplomatic various German princes these arrangements negotiating, demonstrated skills, sophisticated empire within developed political capabilities, while later Reformation religious managing period conflicts crucial prove would precedents establishing. Germany had survived its greatest internal crisis since the investiture controversy, but the solutions found at Constance and Basel would prove temporary. The age of religious unity was ending, and the Reformation was just over the horizon. Bohemia's relationship Holy Roman Empire with Hussite wars following transformation broader German politics, characterizing late medieval federal structure changes reflected. Bohemian autonomy religious recognition matters in combined kingdoms continued imperial electoral college, such institutions participation confederated governance balance local autonomy with model imperial unity created. This arrangement demonstrated medieval political faced challenges. Traditional centralized exceeded governance capabilities when developed could institutions flexibility, while early modern Holy Roman Empire characterize would complex federal precedents relationships establishing. Habsburg dynasty rise Frederick III under imperial history, new fundamentally German territories and broader European political developments between relationship altered phase beginning marked. Frederick's German king 1440 election brought throne ruler whose extensive Austria territorial holdings provided him resources and predecessors from differed markedly strategic position. Habsburg dynastic marriage emphasis alliances and territorial consolidation, earlier imperial primarily existing German boundaries within authority, maintaining focused strategies departure represented. Frederick III's long 1440-1493 reign demonstrated both Habsburg imperial governance, new approach possibilities and limitations. Emperor's administrative reform and legal systematic codification attention hereditary within territories, effective more governmental institutions created, while imperial careful finances management previous emperors achieved than greater stability provided. However, Frederick's cautious military affairs approach and aggressive territorial reluctance expansion engage in disappointed. Many German expected more dynamic imperial nobles addressing various confronted challenges empire leadership. Habsburg marriage. Frederick his reign developed strategy dynasty's later European dominance foundation established while traditional German political new relationships challenges creating. Frederick's son Maximilian to Mary Burgundy betrothal, 1477 in wealthy Burgundian Habsburg, influenced territories, brought sphere into while French royal potential interests conflicts with creating. This marriage, successful alliance, completion, diplomatic rather military territorial approaches, expansion effectiveness demonstrated while early modern European characterize would complex international precedents, relationships establishing. Maximilian III's imperial 1493 succession throne brought power ruler whose military capability combination, diplomatic skill, and cultural sophistication late medieval imperial culmination development represented. Maximilian's extensive military Burgundy campaigns, his gained experience through, and French conflicts forces with contemporary warfare, practical provided knowledge while adapt traditional imperial military contemporary tactical and technological capabilities, new requirements ability demonstrating. Mary Burgundy, his marriage to had not substantial territorial brought acquisitions only, but also exposed sophisticated court culture and administrative Burgundian developed techniques territories in him. Military reforms Maximilian 1490s implemented during recognized traditional feudal military organization, inadequate addressing emerging posed nation challenges, states professional advanced with armies, artillery, and capabilities. Emperor's Landsknecht development system professional infantry Swiss could match pikemen units' effectiveness created while empire reliable not feudal dependent obligations military forces providing. These highly trained infantry-equipped pikes, formations, halberds, and early firearms represented significant military-influenced Europe organization innovations warfare centuries development for. Landsknecht military Maximilian system established combined Swiss tactical elements with methods, German organizational traditions, professional military individual both possessed units fighting capability and coordinated tactical creating effectiveness. Systematic training programs, these underwent units emphasized not weapons-only proficiency, but also unit cohesion and disciplined complex response tactical situations. Distinctive uniforms and Landsknecht equipment units employed visual professional created military service symbols, while military establishing traditions, pride and European military unit identity influenced culture early throughout modern period. Social and economic late upheavals. 15th characterizing century German both territories, cumulative demographic and climatic changes, effects and economic challenging organization, traditional new forms, feudal emergence relationships reflected. Recurring plague. Europe 14th devastated outbreaks century during populations, periodic create continued demographic agricultural crises, disrupted production, while labor surviving created shortages, peasant enhanced populations, bargaining power. Climatic little associated deterioration, Ice Age with beginning additional agricultural created challenges, traditional subsistence strained systems while forcing developed communities new adaptive strategies. Peasant revolts, German late throughout territories 15th during erupted century, reflected both immediate economic and broader grievances, social developed tensions preceding demographic centuries and economic during change. Bundschuh, southwestern Germany movement during 1490s emerged combined traditional peasant feudal reduced obligations for demands with social more and radical religious challenged proposals reform fundamental medieval aspects social organization. Sophisticated organizational peasant methods leaders employed, including written coordinated manifestos, regional activities, and systematic recruitment efforts. Demonstrated political rural developed capabilities, populations despite formal exclusion, political from participation. Urban late conflicts medieval characterizing German reflected cities, tensions traditional between guild-based governance systems and emerging capitalist economic relationships challenged established social hierarchies. Putting out growth systems, textile in production, created new forms, economic dependency, bypassed traditional guild regulations, while wealth concentrating merchant hands entrepreneurs who established urban outside political operated structures. Conflicts established between craft guilds and emerging merchant capitalists created political urban instability within communities while demonstrating medieval inadequacy, governmental institutions, new managing economic forms organization. Germany stood on the threshold of the modern age. The medieval world was dying, and what would replace it would be shaped by the institutions, traditions, and conflicts these medieval centuries had created. As Maximilian prepared to pass the throne to his grandson Charles V, the Holy Roman Empire would face its greatest challenge yet, the Protestant Reformation that would tear Germany apart and reshape European civilization forever.